Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Physiology. Today we're doing chapter 21. I don't expect anyone to show, but if they do, I'll be happily adding them in. So here we go. Let's get started. Sorry about that, folks. Just got a spam call. All right, here we go. Wait a minute. That's not what I wanted to share. All right, let's try this one more time. That's what I wanted to share. All right, here we go. Okay, today we're talking about chapter 21, the immune system. Okay, what are some of the functions of the immune system, the overview of the defenses that your body has to protect itself from foreign invaders and microbes, primarily? One of the jobs is to scavenge dead or dying body cells. And when your body cells die, they have to be recycled. It's one of the jobs of the immune system. The main job of the immune system is to protect you from pathogens and foreign molecules, primarily pathogens. Bacteria and viruses make the majority of what your immune system is fighting against. In addition, parasites are anything that are not normally considered a microbial pathogen, things like parasites, such as protists, fungi, and animals. So animals, we're talking about things like worms. So normally bacteria and viruses are what we're going to be focusing on, but these are also organisms that can make you sick. Bacteria is the main one, and viruses are the second main one. Okay, in addition, your body protects you against allergens, pollen, and foreign proteins. Now, pollen is not really something that causes you to have a problem other than the fact that your body overreacts to it. And I'll be talking about that here in just a moment. And one of its big jobs that we're actually focusing a lot on in medical research right now is recognizing, destroying abnormal or cancerous cells. So one of the jobs that oncologists, which are the scientists who study cancer, one of their jobs is to try to train the body's immune system to attack cancerous cells. Now, this is extremely difficult because they are your own cells. They're only different in very, very subtle ways. Scientists use hormones as well as genetically modified cells. There's a whole variety of things that they do, but that is a big job of the immune system. Okay, some pathologies. What are some things that can go wrong with the immune system? You can have an incorrect response. So that means that instead of leaving alone your own cells and attacking the foreign invaders, your body attacks itself. That's called autoimmunity. That means you become immune to yourself and it starts attacking your own body cells and destroying those. So for example, lupus, type 1 diabetes, and rheumatoid arthritis are all examples of where the body attacks its own cells when it shouldn't. So that's a autoimmune disorder where the body is attacking its own cells. It can be also an overactive response. Now, that is out of proportion to the threat posed. Now, for example, pollen grains cannot possibly make you sick other than the fact that your body overreacts to them. They're not pathogens. They don't live in you. They don't grow in you, nothing. But your body reacts as if they were that. And that's why we have hay fever and why we have anaphylaxis. So hay fever is a mild version of this. Anaphylaxis is really bad when your blood pressure drops, your throat constricts, you're not getting blood pumped to where it needs to be pumped. You're not getting air into your lungs. It can be fatal if you overreact. And now anaphylaxis doesn't usually happen as a result of pollen grains. It's usually as a result of food molecules or other things like bee stings or something like that. There can be a lack of response, the failure of the immune system to work properly. So this is called an immunodeficiency disease, which means that it's deficient. It's not doing the job it's supposed to do. So a good example of that would be bubble boy syndrome. That is a situation where a person is born without an immune system. So no immune system means you can't fight foreign invaders, and these people often die pretty quickly unless they get into a bubble and isolated from all of the pathogens. AIDS is another one. It's acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Bubble boy syndrome is something that you're born with that's congenital. Okay, bacteria. What's some of the structure of bacteria? They're composed of cells with cell walls. So they are living organisms. They're unicellular, and they have cell walls. The fact that they have cell walls and the fact that the cell walls are made of a specific chemical have been very lucky for us and handy for us because that's the main way that we kill them with antibiotics. They may also possess a capsule, which is a protective layer that helps it avoid the immune system. So when the immune system checks it, it doesn't identify it as a foreign invader and can get a pass by the immune system. So what are the living conditions that bacteria require? Well, they're not endoparasites, which means that they don't have to live inside of cells in the same way that viruses do. Now, some bacteria do, but most bacteria live in an environment that's outside of a host cell. Susceptibility to drugs, most can be killed by antibiotics. Now, some have what are called antibiotic resistant strains, which means that they cannot be killed by many or most antibiotics. And that is due to the fact that people have overused antibiotics for the last 40 years. Okay, viruses. So these are not made out of cells. They're made of a nucleic acid with a protein coat. So the nucleic acid, either DNA or RNA, is surrounded by a protein coat called the capsid. What are the living conditions? So these, unlike bacteria, cannot live outside of a host cell. They have to penetrate into a host cell, like a bacterium or us, and take over that cell and turn it into a virus factor. That's how they survive. They must have a host cell to reproduce. They use the cell's machinery to reassemble more viral particles, which then break free of the cell and go infect other cells. Susceptibility to drugs, they cannot be killed by antibiotics. So if you go in for a viral infection to the doctor and they give you an antibiotic, that's not helping you at all. Now, if you bring that up to the doctor, they'll say, well, I'm giving you that to kill the bacteria so that your body can focus on the viruses. That's complete BS. They just want to give you something that you can pop in your mouth and start feeling better, even though it's not actually killing the viruses. Most people don't want to be told by a doctor, well, there's really nothing we can do. Just go home, get plenty of rest, fluids, and you'll be fine. People don't want to do that. So they get the antibiotic, they take it, even though they should know that antibiotics do nothing for viruses. Now, there are antiviral drugs you can take, but those are not antibiotics. Okay, some body defenses. It turns out the most important body defense against invading microorganisms is your skin and epithelium, the surface of your body being intact. In addition, chemicals on the surface of your body, like acids in your stomach and acids on the inside of the female reproductive tract, can do it. Mucus slows down bacteria from swimming. It's very thick and gooey. And then lysozymes are enzymes that kill bacteria. Internal defenses of the immune defense system. The first is called innate nonspecific. Now, this means it's built in and it's not specific to an individual microbe that it recognizes. It's just something that you have to protect you against all pathogens. So, for example, the reaction to become inflamed does help reduce bacterial motility and increases the movement of white blood cells there and increases your blood supply there. These are all things that help you fight infection. Acquired means you have to have been exposed one way or the other, either naturally or artificially. Vaccinations are artificial acquired immunity, and being sick with just being exposed to something is natural acquired immunity. So what are some of the steps in the immune defense? Well, first, you have to detect the invader or foreign cell, usually done with antibodies. The antibody sticks to the surface because the antibody has a very specific molecule it'll stick to. When the antibody sticks to the surface of the pathogen, it marks it as something to be destroyed by the immune system. You can also communicate an alarm to T cells, which are thymus-derived cells. These T cells help organize the immune response and recruit other white blood cells to come in and help with the immune response. And then they can suppress or destroy invader cells, the phagocytic cells. Phagocytosis is the swallowing of a bacterium or virus or other small particle by the white blood cell. It's called phagocytosis, so these are called phagocytic cells because they swallow and destroy, digest those particles and cells. Okay, the lymphatic system is a big part of your immune system. Bone marrow and thymus, the formation and maturation of immune cells. So bone marrow is where the white blood cells form. And then the thymus is where they mature and become taught how to be functional white blood cells. So that's why they're called T cells, because they're thymus derived. They spend time in thymus learning how to be a functional white blood cell. The lymph nodes are really important to the immune defense because what they do is they filter the lymphatic fluid that's coming from your tissues and catch every particle that's in there and check it. So for example, if there's a protein that's specific to a bacterium or a virus, they could send out an alarm saying, look at what we found in the lymphatic fluid, something upstream is potentially a problem. So send out scouts to find it. And that's what happens in the lymph nodes. It's a filter. Normally, lymph doesn't have anything in it other than clear liquids. So if it finds a particle, a virus, a bacteria, whatever, it can initiate an immune response. The spleen contains immune cells that monitor pathogens in the blood. It also monitors red blood cell status and checks for pathogens. So you can live without a spleen, but your spleen does help you with immunity. Lymphatic vessels conduct lymph, which is the fluid collected from the body tissues to the lymph nodes where it's filtered. Leukocytes are the scientific term for white blood cells. This is a figure directly from your text, the OER text, showing you lymphatic system, and then what happens inside of the lymph node and where the fluid goes. So this is a really good figure if you want to get an overall overview of how lymphatic system works. Okay, lymphocytes. Key to acquired immune response, usually found in lymphatic tissue. That's why they have that name, lymphocytes. Basophils and mast cells are two more white blood cells that release histamines. Now, you guys have heard of antihistamines. Histamines tend to cause us to be inflamed, swollen, etc. So antihistamines, we take it to reduce that. So what histamines do is they cause that inflammation, which slows bacterial motility, so swimming, and it helps you fight the infection. Now, the infection is not actually something that's happening when you have antihistamines due to pollen. So antihistamines are very beneficial, but the histamines in a bacterial infection, while making you feel better, may not actually help you fight it better. So heparin is an anticoagulant. What is it used for in medicine? They put it in hep tubes, which prevents the blood in the tube from clotting, and cytokines, which are involved in pain and other responses by the body. Monocytes are very large white blood cells that mature into macrophages. So macro means large, phage means something to eat. So these are the cells that swallow most of the foreign invading cells and body cells. So what is a macrophage? What does it do? It patrols the tissues and phagocytizes or swallows old red blood cells that are worn out and other damaged tissues. So macrophages, one of their main jobs is not to actually destroy invading microorganisms, but to destroy cells that are worn out or dying. Neutrophils are the most abundant white blood cell. This is actually a review question and a test question, so make a note. 50 to 75% of all white blood cells are neutrophils. They phagocytize foreign invaders, bacteria, viruses, and parasites, and release cytokines. And one of the jobs of a cytokine is to cause a fever. Now, most people think, well, why would you want a fever? Well, it's your body's response to it. What it does is it helps all the system move more quickly. So by having a mild fever, you're not going to die from it. It's going to allow your body to move more quickly, destroying the foreign invaders. Eosinophils, they fight parasites and contribute to allergic reactions. So eosinophils are really designed to destroy parasites like worms. Now, the fact that we don't have worms in this country means these eosinophils have to, with their accompanying IgE antibody molecules, what they do is they attack things like pollen, because your body's built to attack worms. And if you don't have any worms, roundworms, tapeworms, etc., it'll find the next best thing, which is pollen grains. And so the fact that they attack pollen grains as if they're foreign microorganisms causes hay fever. And so eosinophils are a big part of why we have hay fever. Okay, macrophages, they ingest molecular or cellular antigens and digest them. So you can see there's the antigen. It could be a cell or just a part of a cell. And then notice what it does is it fuses this food vacuole with a lysosome, and then it breaks down the antigen into little protein bits. And then notice it takes those little protein bits and displays it on the surface. What that is it's saying, hey, look at what I found to other white blood cells. And if you find it, destroy it. Fragments of the antigen are presented on the surface of the cell and alert other immune cells of the antigen/pathogen presence. Hey, this is what it looks like. So if you see this, destroy it immediately. This is one of the jobs of the macrophage. Okay, innate immunity, phagocytosis, and inflammation. And we talked about how inflammation is built in. It's not specific for an individual microbe. And so is phagocytosis, that ability to do that. So we talked about physical and chemical barriers. Your skin being intact is one of the main things to keep you from getting sick. You remember your mom, whenever you got a cut, always wanted to wash it out, put, antibiotic ointment on it and a Band-Aid. This is important because there's a lot of microbes on the surface of your body in the air. And if you leave a wound open, microbes will get in there and start growing. And that's an infection. So taking care of wounds is one of the main things that you do to keep from getting surface infections. Mucous membranes are important because they block pathogenic movement into the body. Ciliated epithelium, this is inside of your respiratory tract, push these pathogens and other dust particles from the inside of your lungs up to your nose, mouth. You can get rid of it. Hydrochloric acid in the stomach kills microbes by its acidic nature. In addition, it unfolds proteins and can activate certain enzymes in your stomach. Lysozyme is an enzyme that you find in both tears and saliva, which kills microbes. Phagocytosis is the ability of macrophages, neutrophils, and natural killer cells, NK, sensor natural killer, to engulf, swallow, and destroy microbes. They engulf and digest recognized foreign cells and molecules. So if something is labeled with an antibody, usually that means it's a foreign invader and should be destroyed. Inflammation, we talked about. What is inflammation? Well, it reduces bacterial mobility or motility. It slows the ability of it to spread to a new area. It's a physical barrier to spread. It promotes tissue healing due to increased blood flow. The reason why the inflammation happens is the blood vessels vasodilate. Vasodilation happens, more leakage happens. So that causes edema or swelling. But that's all good for the healing process, it's just uncomfortable. This also attracts immune cells to the site of the infection so that they can get there more quickly and easily. The larger gaps in the blood vessels allow white blood cells to slip out of there and into where the infection is. Okay, so in this case, the pathogen binds directly to the phagocytic receptors, and then it swallows it and destroys it. In this case, what if the phagocyte doesn't have a specific receptor for the pathogenic antigen on the surface? So in this case, what happens is the opsonin molecule, which is an antibody, sticks to it. And because now anything that is covered with these opsonin molecules are going to be destroyed by this white blood cell because it has opsonin receptor. Any cell that's got a whole bunch of opsonin molecules stuck to it is going to be destroyed by the phagocyte. Okay, histamines come from mast cells. We have mast cells inside of our body. And when mast cells get torn open by sticking to an antigenic protein or cell, histamines come out. What happens is there's swelling, edema, and blood vessel dilation. I talked to you about that. So dilating blood vessels, more leakage, more edema and swelling, discomfort, but it also helps you fight the infection. More blood and white blood cells get to the infection site. What are some of the problems with this? Well, if it becomes excessive, you can have anaphylaxis. You have too much vasodilation, your blood pressure drops because there's too little blood pressure. Blood doesn't move. Swelling in certain things like in your lungs, certain blood vessels get too swollen. You can reduce airway movement of the air and other really important things, swallowing, breathing, etc. Interleukins cause fever, increase in blood vessel gaps, kind of like histamines. More white blood cells and antibodies arrive at the infection site. So interleukins there are doing a similar thing to histamines, but they're specifically attracting antibodies to the infection site. Bradykinins cause swelling and pain. You might say, well, what's the benefit of having swelling and pain? Well, swelling and pain, especially pain, tells you, hey, you have a problem with this body part. You need to stop using it so that it doesn't get any more injured, or you can work on the infection. So bradykinins generate pain. That tells you you need to not use that body part so it can heal. Okay, acquired immunity. So acquired immunity means it's something that you get after you're born based on your exposure to either the microbe or a part of the microbe. So it's an antigen-specific response. That means that your body recognizes the antigen, the protein on the surface of the cell or virus, in which the body recognizes a particular foreign substances and reacts to it. This acquired immune response is mediated by the lymphocytes. Lymphocytes organize it. Beta lymphocytes, or B lymphocytes, when activated, become plasma cells and begin to produce antibodies. So B lymphocytes get activated. When they get activated, they produce antibodies against that particular foreign invader. T lymphocytes live in the thymus. They regulate the activity of other immune cells. And then natural killer cells, as I mentioned earlier, recognize and destroy virus-infected or tumor cells. So if a virus is infecting a cell, sometimes the cell will present proteins on the surface telling your natural killer cells to destroy it, because the cell itself is already dead. It's just trying to help your body destroy the viruses before they become released and infect other cells. Tumor cells are also, so the natural killer cells are really important for getting rid of cancer, having a healthy immune system. Acquired immune types. You can have active immunity, occurs when the body is exposed to a pathogen, creates its own antibodies. So this is normally how we get acquired immunity. We get exposed to it, or we get a vaccination. But the idea is you get exposed, your immune system kicks into gear, and so then the next time you see or get exposed to it, your body's ready to destroy it. And passive immunity occurs when we acquire antibodies made by somebody else. And this is how we get antibodies from our moms during breastfeeding. So the fact that mom has all these antibodies and it passes into her milk, the baby drinks the milk, and the fact that we absorb whole proteins, what that does is it gives the baby the benefit of all of the antibodies and immunity that his or her mom has. So it's called passive immunity because you're not making them yourself. You're getting it from somebody else. This generally only occurs in babies. Clonal expansion, the definition is the division of cells that have been exposed to an antigen, pathogen, to produce a large number of identical cells. So it's clonal because they're clones, right? They're making copies of themselves as fast as they can so they can all stop pumping out antibodies. And the idea is these antibodies are going to spread throughout the body and attach themselves to the foreign invader, making them labeled as to be destroyed. Naive lymphocytes are lymphocytes not yet exposed to the antigen. So once they become exposed to the antigen, they're no longer naive, and then they start to produce the antibodies. Naive lymphocytes undergo clonal expansion after exposure to destroy the invader. So they're no longer naive after they've been exposed to the, once they undergo clonal expansion, they're no longer naive. So there's going to be a little bit of a question on one of your review questions, and potentially a test question is, are they still naive when they start to undergo clonal expansion? No, they're not. So naive lymphocytes leave this naive state and become exposed, and now they're no longer naive. Memory cells, quote, remember the first exposure and continue to divide, passing on the ability. That's why you can get a vaccination against something, and then years later, you're still protected against it because the memory cells remember that vaccination or exposure to the microbe and continue to put out antibodies. Subsequent exposures cause the clones to divide more rapidly. They're ready to go for a quicker immune response. So what happens is they are prepared. So as soon as this foreign invader comes in, they really quickly reproduce because it's the second time they've seen it, and you don't even know you're sick second time. So here's the antigen exposed to the naive lymphocyte, and then it undergoes clonal expansion. Now it's no longer naive, and it produces a lot of antibodies and destroys it. But then the memory cells, the key is the next time you get sick, after the first time you get sick, the next time you get exposed, what happens is you go through a really rapid expansion. So you destroy the foreign invader before it makes you sick, and you don't even realize you were exposed. That's the idea of acquired immunity. Okay, that is it for today. No one's here to ask questions, so I'm going to wish you all good luck with your work this week. And if you're an 18-week student, I hope to see you in lab. If you're a 9-week student, keep working hard. I know it's a lot that you're doing in individual weeks, but keep it up. Send me questions through email if you have any, and we'll see you next time.